these fascinating figures videos have really gotten away from me. It started when I mixed up Thomas Jefferson with Thomas Edison, neither of whom are Benjamin Franklin, and after researching this video, I'll have to make another video on Nikola Tesla. Let's talk about Thomas Edison. Thomas Alva Edison was born in Millen, Ohio on February 11, 1847. He was born to Samuel and Nancy Edison and was their seventh and youngest child, and only one of four who made it to adulthood. Edison had a weird education. Everywhere I went said he didn't have much formal education, but that's because his mother homeschooled him, and his mother was a school teacher. So this was not a kid who was getting a patchwork from odd jobs and whatever books he could get his hands on. His mother knew what she was doing.
I've been doing some research.
Then when Edison was 12, he got his first job working on the railroads, selling newspapers and food to passengers. And it was about this time when his hearing started causing him problems. I heard one story that said when he was trying to get on a train, a worker grabbed him by his ears, which made them pop, and then his hearing was never the same again. But other sources said it was scarlet fever or just more regular head trauma. Then, during the Civil War, Edison switched careers and became a telegraph operator, a job he must have enjoyed because he was really innovative when it came to telegraphs. But it was a difficult job for him because of his hearing loss. So he created one of the first inventions, which was a device that converted the electric signals into something he could see. And I will come back to the rest of his inventions because there's a lot, and patenting made the whole business complicated. Hey! I interrupt this video to tell you about my book, Phantoms of the Inferno, an epic high fantasy with espionage, evil kings, mass extinction events, and shady magical conspiracies. If that sounds interesting, go read Phantoms of the Inferno on Scribble Hub and Wattpad. Book 1 is up, and keep an eye out for announcements because Book 2 will start uploading later this year. Anyway, during his time as a telegraph operator, Edison met his first wife, Mary, who he would go on to have 3 kids with before she died in 1884. Then in 1886, he remarried his second wife, Myrna, who he had 3 more kids with, and all 6 of his children lived into adulthood. And what is a better sign of the progress of that time in history than that? Alright, let's talk about Menlo Park. So in 1876, Edison began inventing full-time when he established his laboratories in Menlo Park, New Jersey, and it was here where Edison made some of his first, most well-known creations. He made the carbon button, the telegraph transmitter, the phonograph, which was the first device able to record and play back sound, and the light bulb. And the light bulb is actually a good place to stop and talk about how it's not actually as simple as saying he invented it, because when we say invent, we think like they made something unique that no one else had thought of before. But there had been light bulbs before. What Edison is credited with inventing, because he was the one who patented it, was the first commercially viable light bulb. And even the first one he made had a very short lifespan, only able to produce light for less than an hour. But Edison worked on improving the light bulb for the rest of his life, both in Menlo and in his other laboratories, West Orange. And one of the ways he worked on improving his light bulb was by trying to harness electric current, which leads me into my next section. So one of the things Edison is best known for is his feud with Nikola Tesla, and the feud actually started when Tesla went to work for Edison. Allegedly, he worked for Edison for a few months before Edison promised Tesla $50,000 to help innovate his direct current generators, which Tesla did, but when he went back to Edison, he was told that was just a joke, so Tesla quit and began working on his alternating currents. And alright, some quick science. Direct and alternate currents both talk about different ways we make electricity travel in order to power devices. With direct or DC currents, the flow of electricity is a straight line and constant, and with alternating or AC currents, the flow oscillates and up and down between positive and negative energy flows, and their main difference seems to be their ability to flow. AC currents are able to flow longer because of their wave, so like the electricity you use when plugging in and charging your laptop is AC, but DC currents work well for shorter flow, so the battery that powers your laptop when it's not plugged in could use DC currents. At least that's the best of my knowledge, and I'm here for the feuding, not the science.
I'm a writer.
So Edison and Tesla feuded for the rest of Edison's life. Tesla licensed patents for his AC current to Edison's enemies and beat him out for the contract to power the 1893 World's Fair. Meanwhile, Edison continuously tried to show how dangerous AC currents were. He helped create an electric chair that used AC currents and even did public displays where he used AC currents to electrocute animals, mainly dogs and horses, but he did once electrocute an elephant. And I gotta tell you, I want to be impartial here, but how am I supposed to hate someone who does that to an elephant? Be nice to elephants, and also dogs and horses. While we're at it, jeez.
Elephant, honey. It's an elephant.
So, ironic to modern-day viewers, someone who Edison actually got along well with and worked with was Henry Ford. In 1912, Edison worked with Ford to help develop the self-starter motor for the Model T. Then later in life, Edison developed diabetes, which would ultimately kill him. In October of 1931, Edison fell into a coma and passed away on October 18th, 1931. And I will say, part of why I even started this Fascinating Figures videos was to talk about the doctors who first developed insulin, but that's going to be a big video. I just wanted to shout out Dr. Banning, Collop, and Best, some men who did really good things and didn't electrocute elephants. So, when it comes to Edison, there are a few things you can take away from his story. One is just the nature of feuds. He feuded with Tesla, and in many ways it was public and petty and electrocuted elephants. I need to stop on that. But in a lot of other ways, it was niche, since it focused around AC and DC currents, which most people, even today, probably don't know anything about. And they got other people involved, not in a petty way, but in a business way. Tesla got the people he licensed patents to involved, and they turned the World's Fair into a battleground. So it's worth asking, when you're writing, what's something niche that may seem stupid to fight over, but boy, could that stupidity breed drama and fun. And what big events do you have in your world? Establishing things like festivals, fairs, and holidays will give you good places for fight scenes, big blow-up confrontations, or chase scenes. Run away! Another thing I want to talk about is how history is written. So Tesla died in 1943, destitute and sick, while Edison died in New Orange near one of his laboratories after filling over 1,000 patents, making a lot of money and becoming a staple in American history. And he didn't do this because he invented the light bulb. Edison's name went down in history because he was a good businessman. He knew how to sell himself. He was a good, persuasive businessman, and he had a knack for seeing ideas and knowing what did and didn't have potential, and patenting them. But somehow, we don't think of Edison as a businessman, but as an inventor, because that's the story he wanted to sell. I feel like we get a lot of stories of villains who have rewritten history to reflect them a certain way, and Edison would make a good villain because he wasn't evil for patenting other people's ideas. That's perfectly legal. He wasn't a villain for his feud with Tesla, even though lying about the money was an asshole move. Again, legal, but not enough to get an angry mob after you. And he's not a villain for being a businessman. No, he's a villain for electrocuting an elephant. And that has nothing to do with his affinity for business or his image as an inventor. If you're writing a villain, you can make them more multifaceted by having the thing they're known for have very little to do with the bad things they did, especially if it's a crime that sends an angry mob after them. And that's all I got on Edison, but I am so angry about the elephant thing, so here's some facts on them. There are 3 species of elephants: Asian, African savanna, and African forest. The first ones are new, not newly created, newly genomed, which is how people realize they're distinct from African savanna elephants. A good way to tell elephants apart is their shape. African elephants are sort of round with more curved backs and smaller ears and one trunk-tipped finger at the end of their trunks that help them pick things up, while African savanna and forest elephants tend to be larger and more box-shaped, with bigger ears and 2 trunk-tipped fingers. They're especially distinct when they're young. You have to remember, baby elephants drop about 3 feet when they're born, and Asian elephants look like they remember every inch of that fall. African elephants do not. There are no thoughts in that head yet. Elephants tend to travel in female family herds with a matriarch who's usually grandma. They live about 60 to 70 years. And the specific elephant Edison killed was named Topsy. She was a circus elephant who had killed a man and had been sentenced to death.
Wild human! Wild human!
Bad elephants were a common term used in circuses at the time because, as it turns out, torturing large mammals with a bull hook in cramped conditions for long enough will make them snap. And to be fair to Edison, he didn't have anything to do with the decision to execute Topsy, and it's not like he was there pulling the trigger. That was decided by Luna Park, but they thought executing would be a more humane death for an elephant thanks to Edison's marketing. And a film crew who worked for Edison filmed it and distributed the footage to help sell the dangers of AC electricity. And Edison had already done animal experimentation, again on dogs and horses, with electricity previously. Topsy was killed in January of 1903 on Coney Island. Today there are about 450 to 500,000 elephants left in the world, when just 100 years ago there were between 3 and 5 million. They're smart, nurturing creatures, best known for being attentive mothers, incredibly empathetic, having long memories, and the world's biggest land animal. And that's all I got. Elephants are cool. Edison was a complex man, and we only really remember the parts of his story that he wanted to tell, which tells us a lot about him in and of itself, but can also inform how you write characters. And looking further into the things he invented can help you understand how technology develops and give you good ideas for world building. So go out, be nice to elephants, and don't forget to read and write.